In an earlier video, we saw how we can use some data to estimate a demand curve and then use that estimated demand curve to figure out what price we should sell our widgets at. And we call that the optimal price. It was and we were trying to maximize the revenue. In this short video, we're just going to take that analysis one small step further. Rather than looking at revenues only, we'll look at revenues and costs to determine profit. Because really for us as business people, we're not just trying to maximize the revenue that we get, we're trying to maximize the profits that we get. So essentially what we're going to do is just add a column or two to our analysis. Rather than just revenues, we'll add costs, and then we'll do revenues minus costs to get profit, and we'll try to figure out what price gives us the most profits. Now let's just suppose, for the sake of making this video brief, that somehow we know that each widget has a variable cost of $20. So every single widget that we cost takes some raw material or some labor, whatever, it costs us $20 to produce. And let's also suppose that we somehow know that no matter how many widgets we produce, there are some costs that we just can't avoid. Like even if we don't produce anything, we still have to pay rent. So let's say that the fixed cost is going to be $100 per day. Cheap rent. Well, then again, it's per day. But let's just say somehow fixed costs are 100. All right. So what does this mean? This means that our costs are fixed cost, 100, plus $20 per widget. So we got $20 times the number of widgets. And so our task then is to fill in this table here with a column for costs that follows that formula I just typed, and then we're going to have a profit column. So let's do that real quick. Let's use this to calculate costs for every specific quantity here in our table. Okay, so we have 100 plus 2 times the quantity. And for this row, the quantity is 179. Just hit enter and we get $459. For, if the price were 5, we'd produce 166 units. And so we have to pay for those plus our fixed costs. So let's do that one too. 100 plus 20 times this quantity. And we could just copy this formula down to get the rest of the table. Now one thing kind of jumps out here is that we do have all these negative numbers. We let it slide in the last video, but let's fix this problem now, because I really don't like how we're starting to get some nonsense in our table. We can't produce a negative quantity, and costs can't be negative. So let's just fix this. Rather than, so if your predicted quantity is negative, let's just replace that with a 0. And we can see that for these weird numbers then, we're not producing any widgets, so we're not going to make any revenues, and the costs are just the fixed costs, right? We're not producing anything. We don't have the variable cost, but we still have to pay the $100 in rent. All right, so that's our cost curve. We could have estimated this with a data set, for example. We could have estimated this straight line, much like we had estimated that straight line if we had cost data, but we'll push that aside. And now let's finally calculate profit. Now what's profit? It's just revenues minus costs. So we just put an equal sign and we do revenues minus costs. All right, so profit is negative. In other words, you can have negative profit. You can lose money. We don't want that. Let's copy this formula down. And and so if we don't produce anything, we still have to pay rent, so we're losing $100 each time. If we price too low, we might sell a whole bunch, but we're not making much money, and so our profits can't even cover our fixed costs or our variable costs, maybe. But there is going to be some kind of sweet spot here that is going to maximize profits, and so now our task is just to find what that row is. So let's try to find the largest number here. And it looks like it's right there. That looks like it's It's the highest number that we can get for profit. All right, so now we have a slightly more sophisticated analysis. Now we can go back to our boss and say, if we price at 45, we might not maximize our revenue, but we are going to maximize our profit. Right? So now our analysis takes into account these different costs. All right. So so our answer is slightly different now than from the previous video, because now each additional widget that we produce does actually cost us money, and we're going to want to economize a little bit on that. All right, that's it.